No, I was asking about the age because I think that's another thing that the three films have in common. What's Anna or Ida's age in your film?
When she was doing it over a year ago, she was 19. Now she's already 21, so it was 2 years ago.
How old is she supposed to be in the film, in the
More or
story?
less 18. 18. Yeah, she's just about to take her vows.
Yes, and your characters are around the same
16,
age?
yeah.
16
Yeah.
as in his film.
Yeah.
So in your film, as we have heard in Class Enemy, there's a suicide. That's the
Trigger point.
trigger of the whole conflict for the rebellion. We also have a suicide in your film.
You shouldn't spoil it for the audience in
Ida.
case somebody hasn't seen it.
Well,
That's, no, okay.
that's probably
Yeah.
true, but
It
that's
does come as a shock. Not anymore.
yes,
Anyway.
not anymore. So it's out in the open now. No, what I wanted to get at is that all three films are about very specific, personal, life-changing decisions about the biggest question of all, probably, who am I as a young person? If you are between 16, 17, 18, that's the main question in all our
The
lives,
paradox is
probably.
that in my film, the young person's actually sorted out. It's the older person who's not sorted out. So
Well-
it's the other way around.
Yes,
Like,
but
my 18-year-old is pretty kind of unproblematic as a character. I mean, the world is a problem. but-
You think so?
yeah. Oh, compared to the 43-year-old, yeah, definitely. I don't think these
yes.
things go away, and I don't think.
Well, I mean, the way I saw Ida is it's all about her finding her identity, first
Yeah.
of all, because she finds out that she's not who she thought she was,
Yeah.
not in a religious way. She didn't know anything about her family history. She didn't know that she even had an aunt whom
Yeah,
she
yeah.
meets then. So the whole film for me is her journey to discovering herself, and then at the end having to come up with a very, very important decision, because I mean, how many members of the audience would have voted for her not to take the vow, and how many would have voted for her taking the vow? And I'm sure that the majority would have voted for her not taking the vow, but she does. And then when you see that she does, you can understand why she does it. Exactly because of the question. Now she knows who she is, she knows about her past, and not only that, she knows about the evil men can do, and that life is not as it was presented to her in her peaceful little convent. But for that very reason,
Yeah.
she's now ready to taking
That's true.
the vow. So the two films by Rock and by you, Céline, are set in our times, present stories. You set your film in a very specific historical context. It's set in 1962 in Poland, and it talks about the time when Poland was occupied by the Nazis. So even 20 years before that. So although we never have flashbacks in your film, the film is very much immersed in 60s aesthetics also. We can talk about that later maybe. But the time of the war is always and constantly very, very present in your film.
Miewasz czasami grzeszne myśli?
Ty pewnie w ogóle nie wiesz, jak ty wyglądasz, co?
let's talk about a little bit about the whole idea for that story came
It
about.
wasn't just the time of the war, it was just the presence of history more widely. I mean, the war was a very big presence, but also Stalinism was there too, and 62 itself was history, quite not so dramatically, but it was like an oppressive police state, when the film is set. It's not the most murderous period. It was a time of what's known as the thaw, but it's not really a film about one thing, it's not about the war. It's just, I tried to make a film that's about a lot of things, I want to make a film that's set in a historical context, because I haven't done that with my fictions. And I like the fact that my heroes are shaped by history in a kind of dramatic, visceral, immediate way, that they had to make big decisions, or their parents had to make big decisions, that they are like steeped in history. And they face real dilemmas, that their problems are not lifestyle choices, but something very concrete, which I find difficult to find in contemporary Europe, like Western Europe. So one of the reasons I went back to that period was to actually confront, not confront the subject of history, but a historical landscape, to set a film that's kind of where everything reeks of the past, and where people are shaped by history, not by the media, so much. And 62 was a good time because it wasn't a dramatic moment, it wasn't like a turning point, like 56 was a turning point, 68 was a turning point. 62 was like the tectonic plates were shifting slowly, and the trauma of the past, of the occupation, the Holocaust, and also the trauma of Stalinism was still very present, but also you felt the presence of new currents, the sort of the breath of fresh air that came from somewhere, through jazz, through art, through kind of beatnik attitudes. I like the fact that these two things kind of coincided and livened each other up. And I just find that time really interesting, and for many reasons. I mean, I was a small kid at the time, so I can remember it quite vividly, in a way that a child remembers stuff, before, when you see the world for the first time. You don't interpret, you just see it and you kind of absorb it, and it gets under your skin. So the music, the landscape, the faces, it all comes from somewhere that I, remember. So that's what was a big attraction as well, just a kind of nostalgia trip in a way. And also it came from a craving, for a historical landscape, but also for an emptier landscape where there's less stuff happening, where there's no, there's less information being fed, there's less noise, less images, where every little thing suddenly resonates in a bigger way. So there are like many reasons for setting it in 62, and each of them is valid.
Yeah. So what made you decide to shoot the film in black and white and in the classic aspect ratio of Academy? Because I'm sure that were not popular choices when you talk to your producers, for example.
No.
I'm sure that you had to fight for.
Yeah, it was
for these
difficult
issues.
to, some financing dropped out as a result, yeah. But it felt, initially just felt like it's the right way to do it, because that's how that period, that's how I remember that period, and that's how I imagine it. And that's how I saw movies when I first saw movies. But also, I realized kind of early on already that I wanted to make a film that's a little bit abstract, that there's some that limits what we see in terms of space, but also in terms of colors and elements in the shot. So it was an attempt to make a film that's as much a kind of like a meditation as a story. And I wanted to make it photographic and really focused on each scene and each moment. And the black and white helped me to do that. Well, partly because the reality is in color, and black and white immediately, if you shoot in a certain way, immediately it kind of it's cut off from that kind of reality. But also when you reduce, the things you play with, you can really kind of be more precise and more, do more with them. And you know, when I started making feature films, I was more interested in capturing authenticity in a kind of literal, immediate way. You know, using sometimes handheld camera, and you know, using you know, just like refocusing during the shot, and you know, and trying to get like spontaneous performance out of actors or non-actors, and I kind of with age and. I've just moved away from that, you know. So I wanted a film that's much more controlled, where the emotion is not kind of literally emotion, you know, which you just grab, generate, and then grab, but where it's sort of in the actual framing of the shot, in the mood of the lighting, and where, you know, you work. You know, it's a different language. You know, so.
So how did you work with your cinematographer? I mean, his camera is excellent, I think, and how much of the aesthetic concept were discussed before the shooting started?
Well, it was, of course, you discuss these things with the cinematographer, so of course it was. The first cinematographer I started with, which we did the prep with, and he started shooting, he wasn't quite at home with the camera not moving, you know, and there was something he didn't feel, something wasn't clicking for him. You know? So I ended up shooting with a guy who was the camera operator, who'd never shot a film before, and he took over, and he was kind of very excited about that way of working. So yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, of course you work, you know, like everybody you work with on a film, you want to bring them into the game, and sometimes, you know, they understand what you're doing better than you do at some point, you know. So it was a very close collaboration, just as close as I have with actors. You know, it's like, you know, once you kind of find the right team and are on the right path, you know, then everyone pulls in the same direction. But that strange framing, that kind of off-center framing, that came up just during rehearsals. You know, when I was just seeing what one can do with this 4x3 format, and at some point it was kind of. Is a bit boring. Some, you know, certain type of shots, the figures in the landscape just block the shot, you know. So I just, for argument's sake, asked the operator to tilt up and see what happens if there's more sky, and it felt interesting. So I decided to keep going in that direction. And then as the film unfolded, you know, I kept going further and further to the point where it was a bit absurd at times, I admit. And then we had a real problem finding a place for subtitles in the film. But it's like every film is like an organic process. You know, you have a certain, you know, just a feeling, idea, intuition. Then you kind of establish the rules and start working within the rules. And at some point, the film kind of directs itself and rejects stuff that doesn't work, you know. So whenever the framing was a bit too classical, or the lighting was too elaborate, or the dialogue was too explicit, you know, then it clearly wasn't working for the film, you know. So we just kind of got rid of that. So.
I have to ask you the question of how you found your young actress, two actresses, as you already said. And I think it's her first film, and we heard from Rock how he cast his films, and I'm sure we will hear your side of the story of how you found your actresses. So how did you find...
Well, I had two lead roles, and so one lead role of Wanda, it was clear that I needed a really great and experienced actress. So I looked at actresses of that age group, and one was by far the best. I saw her in a play, and she was brilliant, and I met her, and she was brilliant. And I needed her to be like a versatile, experienced actress, because the character she plays has several faces. You know, when you have non-professional actors, they're usually good at one thing. You know, that kind of, and you have to work within that. And the character of Wanda, you know, she's several people in the film, and even, you know, several people in one, like on one day. You know, so, and Agata Kulesza is great, and she could do that. For Ida, I looked for a long time for an actress who would be right, because the character on paper was very underwritten. I mean, there's not much you can do to write that character. You kind of feel the character, you imagine. You know, but it was pretty sketchy, you know, the way it was in the script. So we looked and looked among, you know, students of drama, young. We needed somebody young, young actresses, and couldn't find anyone for a long time. And then a friend of mine, because I told all my friends, keep looking because I'm in trouble, I can't find. And then a friend of mine saw Agata Trzebuchowska in a cafe in Warsaw, and completely misunderstanding what I was looking for, she said, "There's a really cool girl who looks like she's a real character. She's a real Goa, I think she's straight from a nightclub, She looks like she could be in one of my films." In fact, there's a friend of mine, Małgosia Szumowska. She makes films with very strong, lively female characters. And she, so I asked Małgosia who saw young Agata, to take a secret photograph of her on iPhone and to send it to me. Agata looked nothing like what I was looking for, because she had makeup, she had kind of like a really hipster outfit and hair. But I kind of invited her anyway for an audition and kind of stripped down her exteriors, her clothes, well, not entirely, but and without makeup, she was great. I mean, she was exactly what I was looking for. And what's more, when she started talking, I realized she's really Ida. She's perfect, because she was very serious, very grounded, thought before she spoke, and watched really well, or was able to observe, and was very bright and very grounded. She was a complete atheist, which made it kind of, and she admitted it just like that. All the other candidates were pretending that, or revealed that they were incredibly religious, and they always wanted to be nuns and stuff. So she was very grounded, very honest, very straight, and she wasn't interested in being in a film, which was even more enchanting. So. And she doesn't want to be an actress still. I mean, she acted this one part, and she doesn't want to act ever again.
Well, maybe she will have second thoughts about that.
I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't think she needs it. So a bit like Ida doesn't need the world. So I tried her out with the other Agata, who plays Wanda, and with Dawid Ogrodnik, the saxophonist, and she was really she was grounded and strong and she could withstand pressure.